Many of us grow up with posters of cars on our wall, and when you're young, you might be all over the idea of one day settling into something like a hot hatch to call your own. But now that you're older, making a bit more money, perhaps considering starting a family, you'll need something that better balances your desires for speed and now sensibility. The 2018 Audi SQ5 is that fulcrum point. Sure, it's a crossover, but it's a hot one, sending you down the road with some hustle while simultaneously coddling you in the warm embrace of both comfort and craftsmanship. Sure, the powertrain might be a little Jekyll and Hyde at points, but if you're willing to hit a few switches along the way, it's not going to let you down. Since this is the performance version of the Q5, one of the best-selling luxury crossovers on the market, let's get right to the heart of the matter. Under the hood is a 3-liter turbocharged V6 that makes 354 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. It comes mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission and standard all-wheel drive. Now, there's no one way to describe the SQ5's powertrain because it is pretty darn adjustable. There are modes for just about everything, whether it's the exhaust, the steering, the suspension, or if you option it, the sport rear differential. Now, with everything set to comfort, it's a short, shifting, family-friendly cruiser that is generally quiet and smooth if you don't mind a little bit of bounce on some bumpier roads. Flip some switches, though, and things start getting a little more interesting. Move the transmission to S, and it'll slam-a-jamma its way up the gears and provide some noisy rev matches on the way back down. Set everything to dynamic, and you're ready to tackle some corners with flat handling and a whole bunch of exhaust noise. It's the middle ground for me where things get a little bit murkier. Personally, I enjoy having the engine set to dynamic because Comfort's throttle mapping is way too soft. I enjoy having the transmission in S, even though the downshifts in the first gear every time you come to a stop are a little on the rough side. And naturally, I have the exhaust set to maximum loudness all the time because, you know, I'm a bit of an oral sadist, even though it drones incessantly at highway speeds. That, for me, is kind of the best mixture between constant dynamism and, you know, something more on the softer side of things. While I've got you in here, let's talk a little bit about the interior. Our tester packs a $1,250 Napa leather package that is well worth the cost of admission. I mean, just look at it. It doesn't matter where your hand or eyes land, you're in for a treat. The stitching on these seats is exemplary, and every bit of the cabin seems as well bolted together as any large luxury flagship. Even the $500 carbon trim is just the right amount of flashy. Do you like buttons? Well, I hope you do, because this car is lousy with them. Buttons for your climate control, buttons on the steering wheel, buttons for your infotainment system, buttons, buttons, buttons. And if you don't like buttons, you've also got a touchpad and a dial, but only one of each. There are really only two main dings against the interior. The first is the rear seat, which, while very pretty, lacks both USB ports and headroom for passengers over 6'1". The other is the cargo area, which at 27 cubic feet is decent, but it feels like it fills up rather quickly, and it's only mid-pack in the segment. Now, Audis are normally pretty well packed with tech, and the SQ5 is no exception. Automatic emergency braking is standard, which is nice, but for an extra $1,800 you can add on adaptive cruise control and automatic lane assist. Now, adaptive cruise control works great, but lane assist, not so much. It takes control of the wheel at weird times and never really felt polished to me. Thankfully, all it takes is one quick button push and it's off. The main infotainment screen covers everything. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are included, as is navigation with Google Earth integration if you opt for the Prestige trim. You can only manipulate it with a rotary dial and touchpad, which does get frustrating if you don't like voice commands, but if you nab that Prestige trim, there is a way around that. Virtual Cockpit. Virtual Cockpit replaces your gauge cluster with a 12-inch configurable display. It takes all the important bits from the infotainment and slaps it right in front of your face. Using buttons on the steering wheel, you can check out basically everything you need to with barely any distraction. There's also a full-color head-up display that further reduces eye movement. Now let's talk about the one truly infuriating part of this car. Let's walk around back here and what are those? Look at those tailpipes! They're huge! But wait a second, they're also entirely fake. The tailpipe dumps out behind the bumper and the whole muffler assembly is kind of jammed up in the bodywork there. Now, this is just duplicitous. I mean, come on Audi, like either put the darn tailpipes where they're supposed to go or just stop pretending. On the whole, the SQ5 is a worth it addition to your garage if you have both the need for speed and the need to get your kids to school and lacrosse practice. Now, with a starting price of $54,300 and an as-tested price of $68,750, it's not exactly cheap, but it is worth noting that this is the most expensive Q5 you can order up. And if you can afford the ticket, you're bound to enjoy the ride.